What's going on, Bucs fans? Back at it again. I told you we're going every single day of the week during this draft week. It's finally here. The Bucs are on the clock at pick 19, and there's some names coming out of the woodwork that are shocking to many people. And we'll get into some of those guys. We'll see what happens Thursday. It's going to be one of the craziest drafts in recent memory, just because really after pick 8, 9, 10, nobody knows. Nobody has any idea. Is someone moving back up to get a quarterback? Will there just be one quarterback? Where the running back's going to go? Will there be a run on edge rusher? There's a lot of questions to ask and a lot of orders which these guys can go in. Not really defined as it has been in past years. So really exciting time right now for the draft. Gearing up. We got another special guest. I teased him the other day. We'll get him in here. We're going to go over some late round prospects. Talk about this number one pick, what's happening here, and we'll also end it with, as we usually do, with the live mock draft. So stick around on the other side. We'll be right back.
Turn up your volume, because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Pirate Parlay.
Battle intercepted, picked off in the end zone. Bucs are going to beat the Chiefs. We're the champions of the world.
The sickest Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. It's going to be sick.
Back here on the other side, we're live here on a Tuesday afternoon here on the Sick Podcast Network, on the Pirate Parlay Podcast. I'm your host, JC Allen, and we're ready to get going, locked and loaded for draft week. Do me a favor right now, like, subscribe, turn notifications. If you're watching on Twitter, appreciate you. Comment. We'll get into your comments. Any questions for our guest or myself, drop them in there. Come on over to Twitter, though. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Let's go. And everyone listening to the podcast form afterwards, I appreciate you guys. Come check us out live. We'll be live tomorrow, Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time with Josh Capo, breaking down the draft the day before. So without further ado, let me introduce our next guest today. He is one of the lead draft analysts over at the Draft Network. He is Ryan Fowler. And welcome to the stream, Ryan. Super excited to have you on here. Your wealth your knowledge is so deep with this class, from first round prospects to potential UDFAs. You've been on top of it, reporting top 30 visits, Zoom calls, meetings, pro day visits. Who talked to someone for 5 minutes by the trash can at the pro day? You've got it. You know it. Super excited to have you on here. Welcome to the stream. How are we doing?
I'm doing well, JC. Appreciate you having me on, and excited to get this thing rolling for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We are in full steam draft week. I know you're probably busy as heck. I'm busy as heck trying to get all my best fits for the Bucs in each round out. So let's talk about one of those best fits in round one. And it wasn't originally going to be one for me, but unless it's smoke, I don't know. But where there's smoke, there's fire. Maxwell Hairston, cornerback from Kentucky at 19, is building a lot of steam. First of all, is that a reach? Because a lot of people are saying if they go there, that's a reach. That's a reach. Or what's your opinion on that? And what's your opinion on the player itself?
Yeah, let me say this, and that I personally, I would never flack a GM in this situation, Jason, like as far as say, hey, if you like that guy, go and get your guy. If that is your player, if you and your football staff sit down and you guys talk as far as, hey, Maxwell Hairston is a guy that we think that can come into this Tampa Bay secondary in the front four that we have and the ability to create pressure. And the guy that we on the back end can play man, he can run, he has the instincts and playmaking ability to just get the ball back to our offense, then I'm fine with a Maxwell Hairston at a 19. Now, however, it is a corner addition. It is an add to the secondary, potentially also for me in my most recent mock. I had Malaki Starks at 19 as far as the range he may offer there. But I think potentially adding along the defensive line or adding potentially a guy that has had some smoke around Tampa Bay and a Carson Schlesinger as well from UCLA potentially is a name to know. But overall, Maxwell Hairston, the player, two things NFL teams want in corners. Can you play man and can you flip and run? He can both do those things at an elite level, in my opinion. 19 is a little bit high for me. I think he's in that Trey Amos, Darian Porter, even type of bucket. Azariah Thomas from Florida State, even though he's a little bit of press man type of specific. So Maxwell Hairston at 19 is a little high for me. But again, I will never flack a GM or a front office to say, hey, look, this is our guy. We trust our evals, and we trust him in this scheme. And so what we're going to ask him to do right away from day one.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because when you look at the Bucs, their normal size profiles that they go for It's not really what Maxwell Hairston provides, but they are making a concentrated effort to get pressure home with 4. So going back to playing a little bit more man than zone, which they've been playing a lot the recent years, it makes sense if they feel like they have a recipe, and adding Hassan Reddick and Yaya Diaby in year 3, Chris Braswell in year 2, Kalijah Cansey hopefully healthy for a full season. They've got to feel like they're going to be able to get more push, which is why they might go in a certain different direction with a Maxwell Hairston. I like the player for all the things you said. It just would go away from what they normally do. But again, there's been a lot of talk about being able to get pressure with 4 this season. I think they tried to do that with some of their offseason moves. Yeah. You mentioned another guy I'm really high on. You had him in your mock draft at 19. Malaki Starks, a safety from Georgia. Yeah. You wrote Tampa Bay needs another athlete in the secondary, and Malaki Starks' range is sensational to watch on tape. I like Antoine Winfield Jr. at strong, but adding Starks to play the free would also allow Christian Izien to flex into more snaps at varying alignments. 100% agree with you. Whether he's playing the strong, whether he's playing the free, whether he's playing nickel, the Bucs, I've heard, also like him a little bit outside as well, which when you watch his tape, you can see that there's instances where he could play outside. Like, could this guy play outside? He looks like, and you throw in Tyke Smith with that versatility of all 3 of those players. Christian Izien as well, who you mentioned, which shout out because no one mentions Christian Izien because he was a UDFA, not that sexy name, but just makes plays. But all 4 of those guys can rotate at any one of those positions and provide value. So getting a guy like that in Todd Bowles' defensive scheme, especially with all the injuries they faced at the positions last year, safety, nickel, corner, I think it'd give you a layer of protection if injuries do hit, but just give you an awesome, versatile player you can use in a variety of ways.
No, absolutely. And I remember just first watching Malaki Starks, JC, as a triple option quarterback back in high school. The kid is a sensational type of athlete. Now, for me, there are some concerns as far as the one-on-one tackling, working downhill in the tight areas, as far as you got to line up against a Brock Bowers type, former teammate in Georgia, and man coverage. And there's some concerns for me at times, but I'm not asking him from day one to be Derwin James or Kyle Hamilton. There's a lot of talent on this Tampa Bay defense, as you've mentioned here over the last few minutes, where they're going to try to get home with 4. They're going to add some more bodies in the secondary. Christian Izien, by the way, JC, I remember when him coming out of Rutgers, I put an article out on the Draft Network saying, hey, before the draft, be aware of this young man because I don't know where he goes, but he's a flat-out football player. And I know it's still out there on the internet somewhere, and he's turned out to be a hell of a ball player for the Tampa Bay Bucs as far as his versatility. So Malaki on the back end to pair with an Antoine Winfield where you can play high, you can play low, you can roam number to number. And when he flips and runs and attacks the football at its highest point, Malaki Starks is at his best. And he is safety 1 for me in this class. And it's not Nick Emenwari.
Yeah, I'm not high on Nick Emenwari. ATH. That's what I see in Nick. I mean, yes, 100%. There's a lot of good things there, but there's a lot of development needed.
Yes, 100% agree.
I personally don't want the Bucs to be the team to take that risk, but if someone does and he goes to the right system, right scheme, right coaching, he could be really special. But at this point, it's too rich for me in the first round for a guy like him. And speaking of Starks, too rich in the first round, it seems like GMs don't get it. They got it with Kyle Hamilton. Derwin James is a little bit beyond that, but Antoine Winfield fell to the second round. Then we had Brian Branch fall to the second round. Then we recently had Cooper DeJean fall to the second round. Teams, the GMs like to say, this is a pass-happy league, pass-happy league, pass-happy league. A lot of teams are putting 3 wide receivers out there. Nickel cornerback is almost a starting spot. A lot of teams have their base 4-3, 3-4, 4-2-2, whatever they're playing. But a majority of the time, when the first play comes out, they're rolling out a nickel cornerback on the field because the team's coming out in 3 wide. It's a starting position in my mind, but for whatever reason, these GMs keep passing on it. Is this the year you have them at 19? Is this the year that GMs are like, all right, these versatile secondary players who can play X, Y, and Z positions? Is this the year they finally wake up and like, we're going to take this guy in the first round?
Yeah, we'll see. And I feel like with all those guys as well, there was a lot of prospect fatigue on them. Remember the Kyle Hamilton discussion was, can this guy really play? I mean, that was a joke. Turn on the tape and watch Kyle play. Or Brian Branch was personally one of my favorites coming out a few years ago, out of Alabama. His ability to align everywhere and be a flat-out dog. He's not 6'2", 6'3". The guy's 5'10", 5'11" at most, just as far as flying around and making plays. And, of course, all those guys have ended up in pretty decent spots. Or look at Cooper last year, what he was asked to do for Philadelphia, specifically living inside or potentially even playing some safety down the road for them, being that versatile piece. But you got to get guys in the building that can do a variety of things and do them well. You don't want to be a jack of all trades, right? And that master of none. And I think I look at this class, like a guy like Malaki, to where I'd keep him high and that atypical free. But I think there's even some players in that day 2, day 3 corner bucket for a guy like even Jacob Parrish from Kansas State, to where he profiles as a nickel, but he's bulked up. And from the teams I've talked to, as far as they have some grades on him as a perimeter guy, and some teams like him on the outside. Right. So this versatility and really the no consensus as far as where these players ultimately going to go ultimately still ties into that same conversation we just had, as far as Malaki is listed as a safety, but what else can you be for us as far as a guy comes down in the nickel, plays high, plays low, and into that corner type of bucket for a team like Tampa Bay, and they're on day 2 and day 3.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think he's one of, you mentioned top 10, 12, 15, whoever you are. Most people don't have more than 15 first-round grades in this draft. Yeah. And I think Malaki Starks is one of those guys. And if you can get him at a pick like 19, I think it's surplus value, and he's bringing versatility to play multiple spots if there's injuries. And that's really what the Bucs needed last year, was guys who could come in. They had Josh Hayes and Tyreek Thunderbrick playing outside cornerback.
Yep.
They had Kayvon Merriweather playing safety, then released them. He went to the Lions for 2 weeks and then came back, really turned it on at the end. But again, they're relying on these UDFA guys and 6th, 7th round picks to come in. They're just not ready, and they need bodies there, and they need versatile bodies. So I really like Starks for that reason. Another guy that I like too, who I think is kind of getting slept on a little bit in this draft process. I mean, maybe not really anymore, but Trey Amos. He's shooting up the boards, or we're catching up to the boards. There's been some interest. They brought him in for a 30 visit. More of just a press man. He's not going to be amazing in zone for you. He's shown some glimpses of being able to play there capably, but he's more of that man cornerback. What do you like about him? Is 19 too rich for him? And do you think he's a good fit for the Bucs?
Yeah, I'll say this. I don't think Trey gets out of day 1. I really don't. I think he's absolutely somebody that continues to rise here, specifically post-combine, I would say. He's got the size, he's got the length, and I think everything for me, at least when I eval the corner position, is footwork. You got to have footwork. You got to be able to flip and run, and you got to be able to accelerate downhill out of your breaks. And I think when watching Trey, what he did in the SEC specifically this past year really impressed me, just as far as his ability to play man and live in that contact window as well, but also be a guy I think he's underappreciated a little bit in zone. As far as I can line a guy 7 yards off, and his ability to click downhill and just close those windows off at the NFL level, to where he potentially could be a CB1 type of player for a team. And you're trusting in Tampa Bay to where if you can consistently get home with 4, it makes life that much easier for the guys in the back end. So I like the fit. I like the player. Again, I don't think he gets out of round 1. If he's there, even at the back end of night 1 and Buffalo's still on the board, I don't expect him to get past them as well. So I really like Trey Amos. I'm glad you mentioned his name as just a fluid, quick twitch type of player at his size, above 6 foot. That also has the length in case some of that footwork may he's dropping back in man and just kind of takes a couple of gather steps and then works his way downhill. Those are some certain things in his game to where you have certain things to mask other inefficiencies that may be small in his game, but also extrapolate themselves when you get to the NFL level, and everything is just showcased on a higher type of level against higher type of athletes around you. So I like the player as well.
I want to talk about 2 other guys. Starks has been routinely marked to the Bucs, but 2 other guys who, whether it's medical, whether it's limitation concerns, especially, against the run. I think you probably know where I'm going with these 2 players. Jihaad Campbell, obviously with the medical concerns for weeks now, and up until about last week when we got some clearance, I think, on some medicals. He was consistently mocked to the Bucs at 19. Before the medical recheck, I was told if he's there, they're sprinting the card up. It seems like that's cooled off a bit with this new medical check. What are you hearing about his potential value? I saw someone say the other day that he could fall. They wouldn't be surprised if he fell into the 2nd round. Is that something you feel like could happen? What are you hearing as far as medicals? I know there's a shoulder, but also whispers of a knee injury. What are you hearing?
Yeah, it's out there for sure. For the teams I've spoke to, it's not a long-term concern. It may hamper him a little bit as far as working into these next few months or even in a training camp, but they have to take it a little bit slower. Why is Jihaad not being a full participant? Those types of things. Personally, what I've heard is that, look, as far as the off-ball linebacker class, the true green dots, Carson Schwessinger is the number one player on teams' boards. It's not Jihaad Campbell. Why? Is because look, Jihaad came out as a high schooler as an edge rusher, and I think right now, even though as loaded as this edge class can be, he's looked upon as an edge hybrid off-ball backer right now for teams that I've spoken to. So at 19 for Tampa Bay, I'd still be absolutely fine with that addition. I'm a big fan of Jihaad Campbell's game. He just flat out makes plays up and down the front seven and lives in the opposition's backfield and also has the athleticism for me with more coverage reps to work out in the fringe areas. So right now, he's a hybrid player that similarly, you look at the Frankie Louvu types of the world, the Nick Bonitos initially coming out of Oklahoma, where he can be that right away for somebody. But again, the off-ball backer class, he's not looked upon as this true Luke Kuechly, Bobby Wagner type of off-ball backer right now for a lot of teams across football.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with just experience, instincts, and having that split time. I think there's really the potential for him to develop into a really good off-ball linebacker, but needs more time there, and missing a bunch of time isn't going to help. Another guy is Donovan Ezeiruaku, consistently mocked to the Bucs. Some people think he could go higher than that. He's a dog as a pass rusher. He's got incredible length. I think last year between hits and sacks, he was like at 36, quarterback hits and sacks last year, like 60 pressure. He's just an absolute nightmare, lives in the backfield. However, he's got a lighter frame, smaller body, and while he did show he could set the edge in college, the ACC, BC, their opponents are a little bit different than going up against some of the big tackles in the league. There's really some concerns that I've heard about his ability to be an every down type of edge player because of those potential limitations in the run game. And teams might be hesitant on spending a high first-round pick, top 20 first-round pick on someone who profiles to be at least at the very start as designated pass rusher. Are you hearing those same concerns, or do you think it's draft season?
A little bit. It's a little bit of draft season. And even in my opinion, in my conversations I've had the last few weeks on Donovan, he's one of my favorite edge rushers in the class. I had recently a couple weeks ago, he was in the teens, to Cincinnati, a few picks in front of Tampa Bay. I can't say enough good things, and every year we had to do a process where sometimes it's like last year, for example, the Brock Bowers Auburn tape was really the resume tape of the class, to where you can turn it on and say, this kid is going to be special. For Donovan's tape against Pitt, I didn't see from anybody in this class. It's not Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, the Shamar Stewarts of the world as far as these game rushers. What's that?
You took over the game.
He took over the game easily. And we had 15 pressures, something like that, 5 sacks. He was just – and what Pitt tried to do as far as at the tackle position, bringing in Gavin Bartholomew, their tight end, to block him, who's also a pretty damn good blocker himself. We brought in Desmond Reed as a running back to try to chip him. It didn't matter. And when I watched that tape and watching him from 2023 to 2024, I wanted him, JC, to take that step. Can you take that step to be a top 32 guy for somebody? For me, he absolutely is. Is it someone that I could see going in the top 20? Yes. And personally, I'd be okay with that. Or I could also see him ranging into the back end of round 1 because of those limitations, as you mentioned, as far as being a true first and second down guy right now, ability to hold to the edge, peek and pursue, and range in the fringe areas. But Donovan Ezeiruaku is one of those guys, JC, that I simply cannot say enough good things about. The progression that he continues to have year after year after year. I know the ACC is not the big bad ACC of decades ago, bottom line, but projecting his skill set right away as a guy that is still about a B to a B- as a run defender and has a plan as a pass rusher on every single down from a varying of alignments. That's a player that I'm willing to take a bet on. That is a really damn good player for somebody right away.
Yeah, I really like him too. I wonder about those other things. The Bucs really, really like their guys to be able to set the edge, and drop in coverage too as well. I don't know. I liked him. He was in my first mock draft I did. I don't know if the Bucs are fully sold on him. It's going to be interesting to see. Draft is crazy, man. I can't wait for it.
It'll be fun on Thursday night. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be all week, man. All week.
Yeah.
The day 3, like there's so much varying on like this guy could go here, this guy go here. And some of my rankings will kind of go over my best fits that we'll go over here in a minute are like that. It's like this guy, someone, says, oh, he's a 5th round pick. Over here, they got him at a 7th round pick. You look at mock draft database, he's a 3rd round pick. So it's like there's so much. It's like whatever your flavor is, and especially at defensive tackle, which I want to go, and not a late round guy, but a guy who I've really kind of grown to like through this process. I want to get your thoughts on him because I think defensive tackle is so deep. Like we could be 15, 20 guys off the board day 2. Like it's going to be crazy. And there's all sorts of guys you can get even on day 3 that if you want a big nose tackle, if you want like just a 2 gap or guy to just a 3 tech to get after the quarterback and nothing else like on rotation. There's like so much you can get in this draft. But I did want to circle back to Maxwell Hairston because I've been kind of getting blown up about some of the old SA allegations that he had against him. Have you heard from anybody? Any teams that is a concern, or is that something that's, they're not worried about?
Yeah. I'll say this and I'll be as transparent as possible on this. I can't get into too much of that, but I have heard it from multiple teams, but I can't sit here and go into too much detail there, especially when I would say myself, there's more clarification needed there, but I've heard from multiple individuals that are even away from football. If that provides some clarity there as well, as far as that may be something that teams are absolutely having a major red flag on. So that's something to have be clarified down the road, but not trying to break any news or anything like that. But it's just something that's in the evaluation.
Do you think some of those teams have taken him off their draft board or moved him down the draft board?
Absolutely down. As far as off their board, I don't have anything about that. No, but definitely down. Yes.
Okay. A guy who doesn't have allegations on him is Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee. He's been gaining steam. I think one of your rivals, I won't say the name, but they put out they recently bumped him way up their rankings up into potentially the back half of the 1st round. I still see him as an early 3rd round prospect. Maybe sneaks into the back half of the 2nd. But talking about Omar Norman Lott, I really like this kid. I think there's so much there for him as far as to develop to become just a 3-down, really just a great rotational role, especially with the Bucs with Vita Vea and Kancey as this 1-2-3 punch that just keeps these guys fresh, rotating in waves. What are your thoughts on Omar Norman Lott?
He's one of these guys, JC, that I sometimes I hate about the draft process because there's prospect fatigue. November, December, we were talking about Omar Norman Lott as a top 35 lock. This guy was all over the place up front for Tennessee. He can play 1, he can play the 3, he can play the 0. You can stand him up if you really wanted to. I enjoyed getting to know him as well, who the player is in between the years down at the Senior Bowl. And this is a guy that, look, you want a longer defensive line. I'll tell you right now, he is a physical just specimen up front to where he doesn't – it's kind of like Mason Graham a little bit to where when you look at him, it's not like, oh, this guy looks like a top 10, 15 player. But when you just feel the power in his hands. I remember talking to Cooper Mays, the Tennessee interior offensive lineman, said, look, Omar Norman Lott is as strong as I've ever felt along a defensive line as far as just a guy that is just immensely, immensely powerful. And he's not the biggest guy in the world. Omar had upwards of 15, 30 visits. Yeah, damn near half the league. He was going everywhere. So a lot of teams like him. They wanted to get him in the building, learn a little bit more about him. So versatile alignment up front is just awesome in his game. I don't think he's perfect. I think at times he can get lost in the shuffle a little bit if he's not able to anchor against some of those double teams. But I think overall, both he and another guy I also really like that, again, is not getting talked about enough, is Darius Alexander from Toledo.
I love Darius Alexander.
He's a hell of a ball player.
He was my 1st round pick for the Bucs after a small trade back.
I love it. Both those players are kind of in the same bucket for me as far as just guys that are not talked about enough in this really loaded defensive tackle class.
Yeah, with Norman Lott, I just think it's time. I mean, I feel like when you look at him, he just flashes this dominance when he's left one-on-one sometimes. But what I wrote about him here is he needs to be more controlled in his technique, develop a more detailed pass rush plan with counters. utilizing counters, and is just a bit undersized. But again, that's all just developmental stuff. You can teach technique. You can teach pass rush plan. You can teach counters. You can teach that kind of feel for, okay, if I do this, set him up with this and get hit. You can teach that stuff. He's got skills that you can't teach, I feel like.
He takes every single rep personal. Yeah, he takes every rep. Every rep at the Senior Bowl, or even watching him at Tennessee, he's just someone that every single rep. That's just a guy you want to go to war with, bottom line, every single day.
Yeah, I mean, he's explosive and powerful at the point of attack. He's got great length. His hands just never stop working, and they're just nasty, violent.
Active. Very active.
And I mean, when he converts speed to power, especially if guys aren't anchored for it, it's over. It's over for you. Okay, so let's jump into some of my defensive tackle guys here, because I break them down my best fit for the Bucs in every round. Let's jump to round 4 and 5. I'll just kind of lump these two together because I want to get your thoughts on some of the offensive guys I have here. But Vernon Broughton out of Texas, I feel like he's more of that 5 tech, kind of that Logan Hall kind of replacement for them, who's in a contract year, and kicking 3 tech a little bit as well in sub packages. And then Ty Robinson in the 5th. Now, I know Ty Robinson in the 5th might sound crazy because he seems like he's shooting up, or we're catching up to the boards, but there's still some things about him in his game that I feel like he's just like a lunch pail player, right? He's not elite at really anything, but he's really good and he doesn't quit. He never gives up on a play. But what are your thoughts on those two guys? And am I off on both of them as far as rankings? Should I have swapped them? What do you think?
I think both those guys to me are a little bit similar as far as the concerns. Both those guys at times I see them rely on power a little bit too much, specifically with Ty. And look, one thing that I want to see more of is their hand counters, specifically Ty, where you're such a high effort player consistently. If you can just continue to modify your approach within the interior, whether you're at the 1 or at the 3, if an offensive lineman for both those guys can walk their hips to their hips, their feet stop. And I see too much of peeking and just looking and pursuing. There's no leverage there. There's no engagement to where I'm going to continue to try to drive you back.
Yep, that's what I put for a Ty. Inconsistent leverage, needs to refine his pass rush plan.
Yeah, I think I want to see a little bit more from Ty, because at times I see a little bit of his teammate Nash Hutmacher in Ty Robinson, even though I do have Ty higher. There are some similarities in those players. And even I talked to a team a couple weeks ago that said there are a lot of relations or the parallels, as far as what Ty offers. And I don't know if you remember this name, but Adam Carricker years ago coming out of Nebraska, to where big, strong, physical run defender can be that for you, but we don't know what we're going to get and where we're going to line them as far as that vertical type of pass rusher. And again, some of the same concerns with Vernon as really that kind of tweener. Are you a 4-eye? Are you a 5? Can I stand you up? I have some concerns as far as your ability to win the outside with athleticism. So both those guys have some more cons than pros, but both those guys have tools and traits which you like to bet on day 3 to come into a roster and compete.
Right. With Brown, I put that toolbox of pass rush moves, but hand placement needs refinement, better body control and balance, late time in the snap. And he just likes to fight on blocks. Just get off, dude. Stop fighting on this block. Just get off and go get the quarterback or the ball carrier. That was one of the things that I saw about him. But I like both of those guys as developmental guys. You bring in the 4th, 5th round, Logan Hall replacements, 5 tech, 4-eye, 3 tech, whatever one, wherever you want to put them, has that versatility on the line, and can be, a difference maker as they continue to develop and refine their technique. All right, my 6th and 7th round picks here. I have Tonka Hemingway out of South Carolina, and Junior Tafuna out of Utah.
Love it.
There's just for clarification, the Bucs have either met with these guys, formal interviews, informal interviews, pro day conversations, Zoom meetings, whatever, or have hosted them. That's why they're kind of in my fits here for them and the way that they fit the scheme. But talk to me about Hemingway and Junior Tafuna is really interesting. I think with his off-ball linebacker background. Talk to me about both of those guys.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned Junior's name. I'll talk about Tonka first, but as far as a guy that even had a lot of pop coming out of last year, if he declared, I remember talking to a scout in Chicago as far as they're saying, hey, Tonka's a guy that we could see in the 4th, 5th round. Went back to school, and obviously someone now that's going to be likely in that late day 3 type of bucket. I think he's still got a lot of sloppy fat on his body, so I need him to get in the weight room and work on that a little bit. I think that will come at the next level, but a good player along that South Carolina defensive front that was outstanding this year. Just so many players in that front 7. And then with Junior, I'm so glad, JC, that you mentioned him. He's one of my favorite players in the 5th, 6th, 7th round bucket along this defensive line, because late addition to the Senior Bowl, comes down there, no sleeves, no gloves, put on your helmet, strap up, and just whoop up on people and take their lunch money a little bit. That's what I saw in Junior Tafuna's game. And I think he is somebody right away I have no issues with as far as a rotational piece on rundowns, and also someone in isolated scenarios. If you're a guard that can anchor, or if you're a center that has bad hand placement and punch timing, Junior Tafuna is going to put you on your backside, and you're going to be looking at the sky, and he's going to be chasing your quarterback down. So I don't think there's enough attention with a guy like a Junior Tafuna, because also I love players out of the Utah program. You always know what you're going to get from the Kyle Whittingham coached kids, who they are behind the face mask. Junior Tafuna is a hell of a young man that takes every single rep personal up front. He's going to continue to work. And then when you turn on the tape and see him in a neutral environment like the Senior Bowl, those are all boxes that teams have been allowed to check on a guy like Junior. And I think he's going to surprise some people where he goes in this draft.
Yeah, he's got a quick first step too. Like he gets off. Good lateral quickness, can move down the line in pursuit, active hand. He disengages really well. And I think that comes from his linebacker background, because he can get his hands up on and get him off of him pretty quick. I really like him. I've liked him for a minute. All right, let's jump to the offensive side of the ball. A guy who I think the Bucs could be interested in that later round. We'll start at the back half. Is Jonah Monheim from Minnesota. So much flexibility with him. He started in a bunch of different positions. What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, from USC, Jonah Monheim. Yeah.
Oh yeah, USC. Sorry.
All good. Don't watch the Michigan tape. I'll tell you that against Mason Graham. That was not good for Jonah. But he's been talked about, JC, as a long time as far as a high-level recruit, play center, play guard. I think he's someone right away. He is that tweener up front. I don't know if he could be even that 6th offensive lineman, which is an important role up front. But I do like the hands. I like the footwork. I like his ability. You can see at USC this year specifically when they lost Caleb Williams, and Miller Moss was back there as far as rotating and setting protections up front, communicating to his left and right, being that leader at the pivot spot. So I don't know exactly how I really feel what Jonah could be for an NFL offense, but rotationally, as a day 3 type of player that has some guard center versatile type of skill set, big physical body, really strong upper half, kind of that linear type of mover that also does a nice job as far as finding his landmarks at the second level. That is Jonah Monheim. I just think there's a lot of inconsistencies in pass pro, which does scare me a little bit in his profile.
All right. Sticking with the offensive line, 2 tackles here that I like. In the 5th round, a guy like Logan Brown, and then in the 4th round, rather, Logan Brown. And then in the 6th round, Holland Pierce, I think, is really interested. We've talked about Jackson Slater multiple times, small school prospect. Jason Light loves that type of guy, versatility along the interior. But Holland Pierce and Logan Brown, talking about those 2 guys as developmental swing tackle types, because I think the Bucs, you look at what they've done, they've put resources into their line, left tackle, right guard, center. One thing they haven't done recently in the last couple of years is draft a backup lineman to kind of develop into either that interior 3-guy spot. And they like Elijah Klein a lot, but they haven't drafted a tackle since they drafted a tackle to move inside and Cody Mock, but tackle to play tackle rather, because they didn't even draft Gedeke to play tackle. But what are your thoughts on those 2 guys?
Man, JC, you're watching tape, man. I love it. I absolutely love it. Holland Pierce from Rutgers is another one of my guys in the offensive tackle class on day 3. The guy is built like a small townhome. He's absolutely humongous. The guy's massive. I think what's so impressive about him is even last year, there was a guy with a similar type of Conversation around him, Aneem Donkwa from Howard, that didn't end up on a roster. He was with Washington for a little bit, but just as far as a big physical player. But there is refinement in Holland Pierce's game out of Rutgers. And the way in which his feet move at 6'8", over 350, 60 pounds is absolutely sensational, JC. I don't know if there's another player in the class that, as far as his body type, that moves the way he does at his size. It's really a gifted type of A or elite trait in his game. And he's absolutely somebody I'd be willing to take a bet on, maybe even higher than the 6th or 7th, maybe late 5, early 5. If you really like him, you saw what you like what you saw in the Big Ten, like what you saw down in that Shrine and isolated opportunities. So Holland Pierce from Rutgers, hell of a ball player. Heard a lot of good things as far as who he is as a young man as well, coming in as a potential culture type of guy in the locker room as a developmental player. And then Logan Brown from Kansas, really one of the more gifted athletes in the class. Credit to Lance Leopold at Kansas for getting a lot of good ball players in the building after Kansas was always looked upon as the basketball school, out there in Lawrence. They got some players. And Logan's a guy that's been talked about as a tackle. He's been talked about as a guard. He's just a player, I think, even right away as a 6th offensive lineman to come in when you go unbalanced in goal line situations to move an outside linebacker off his spot. He can do that for you. So 2 versatile players, big physical athletic guys, both profiles.
Yeah, Holland Pierce too. Like once with his length, if he gets his hands on you, like it's over. Like he's going to steer you well past the pocket and goodbye. With Brown, what I really like about him is that a lot of his weaknesses or his cons are things that he can improve on. It's not like I feel like there could be some starting upside with him. Definitely as a swing tackle, definitely as that 6th lineman, but he needs to improve his technique. He needs to improve his leverage. He needs to his instincts are still kind of developing at the position. So I feel like with Brown, there's tremendous upside there with everything else. He's physical in the run game, fluid, athletic, powerful on the move. He can play zone and gap schemes. He's excellent in pass protection. He just 0 sacks and just 6 pressures. Like that to me, playing at Kansas, like, of course, they're not going against, the top of the top all the time, but they went up against some good competition this year. For him allowed just 6 pressures on the year, crazy to me.
And I'll even say this too, JC, as far as, when he's drafted, wherever he goes, because he will hear his name called, when they post clips on NFL Network or ESPN, wherever you watch, and people are going to see him and say, this guy looks the part as well. He looks every part of an NFL starting offensive tackle. It's just like you said, finer nuances in his game, just working on those little things. I think he has a chance to be a starter at some point in his career.
All right, let's run through some tight ends real quick. I like Colston Loveland in the first. We don't have to touch on him, but I like him a lot if the Bucs decide to go tight end in the first round. I really don't think they'll go 2nd or 3rd round. I know, they talked about adding a wide receiver, adding a pass catcher along the same type of scenario here, but it's probably one of the easiest rooms to upgrade. They got Payne Durham, they got Devin Culp, they've got Ko Keefe. Harold Fannin Jr. is someone that they spent some time with at the combine. Gunnar Helm, they had a formal conversation with him as well. But I think if they do go tight end, it's probably going to be a little bit later. Jake Brenningstool out of Clemson. I'll just shout out all 3 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks. Maliki Mataveo out of UCLA. That's that throwback wide tight end, but he's got a lot of good stuff. And you mentioned him earlier, Gavin Bartholomew out of Pitt. As that kind of 7th round, 6th, 7th round type of guy. Talking about those 3 guys, what they bring, and your thoughts on them, and as Bucs fits as well.
Yeah, I really like Jake Brenningstool, really becoming the number 1 target, right, for Kate Klubnik down there at Clemson this year towards the back end of the year. And as they work into the CFP, I think he does a lot of good things. And I think he can become a high-level tight end too for somebody. If you're really lacking at tight end and you're asking him to come in and potentially compete as a tight end 1. Now, I think that's a lower level type of player right now at this point in time because of his ability as a flex weapon. But there's a lot of good things in his ability to snap off routes. He competes his butt off as a blocker. Over the middle of the field, he's got really good hands. He can go up and get it in the red zone. So be that threat inside the 20s, both inside the 20s and between the 20s with Jake. Malaki is someone that, from UCLA, another guy from UCLA this year. They don't have a ton of guys coming out each and every year, but this year, obviously, they got some big-time ball players coming out. He really runs well. When he can get the foot turnover going out in space, he's just a nasty runner. One thing I loved about his game, and this is similar to what I see in Tyler Warren, is his ability to get after you in the ground game as a blocker, even though it's not as good as Tyler, But when the ball's in his hands, that translates. And what I love is when he's near the sideline, you saw a lot of times at UCLA and at the Senior Bowl, he will never, JC, go out of bounds. He will never go out of bounds. He will force a DB to tackle him. Always. He's always fighting for 2 or 3 extra yards, lowering that shoulder and trying to get just every single inch, which we know does matter in the game of football. And then the other guy you mentioned was
Gavin Bartholomew, who you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, showing up with the mullet at the Senior Bowl. That's the kind of guy that's just kind of a little grittiness to him as well along the front 5. I think he could be an extension of the offensive line right away for an NFL team. The ability as a flex weapon, I feel like, was even better in years past. He was a little bit more featured in the offense. But I think right now he's going to be a flashback or throwback type of wide tight end, kind of guy that's maybe in the red zone, front side of the pylon, box out of safety, that type of thing. But everybody needs really that tight end 3 to come in, block his tail off, and be someone that is really in that you want to run 12, you want to run some 13, really get after in the ground game. Like for Tampa Bay, Bucky Irving, Rashad White, lean on them a little bit more. Gavin Bartholomew is going to come in and compete right away.
Yeah, especially out in space too, on pulls and screens. Like he gets out there and he's really effective in that way as a blocker too. And he just gets off the line real quick with urgency, I feel like too.
Yes, he does.
Quick top speed, gets the top speed quickly, long strides. I really like him. Going from one pit guy, we're going to jump around a little bit over here because he's actually my inside slot wide receiver best fit in the 7th round is Kanata Mumfield. I like him a lot. Tell me why I shouldn't, because I really like this guy.
I'm not going to disagree with you here, JC, and I'm not. He is, for me, one of the better route runners in the entire class. Absolutely. Yes. Separation translates. Don't care who you are. Don't care if you're 6'2". Don't care if you're 5'5". Doesn't matter. If you can separate, it translates to the next level. That's why, for me, last few years, I took a lot of crap with Tank Dell from Houston. How did that turn out when he's healthy? Guys that can separate at the collegiate level usually always translate to the next level, and that is him. So I just love his game. I really do. Middle of the field, watch the Boston College tape, going over and getting over the middle, separating on the outside, snapping off routes. He's tough on the perimeter. 6th, 7th round, guy that can separate like that and really snap off, be a wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6. I know some teams even want to have him as a returner as well. He did some of that in this pre-draft process and a couple private workouts that I was told. So really like Kanata Mumfield, JC, and I'm glad you mentioned him because he's a ball player for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. He knows how to get open. Like,
yes.
I wrote, he runs routes like a seasoned pro and has a quick release to create initial separation. Like, that's what he does. He can play outside, but I think he'll probably do better in the slot, especially given his size. But he does have a little bit of that outside flexibility. Moving to the 6th round, we're going backwards now. Jordan Watkins out of Ole Miss, another guy in the slot. He's got the speed, man. I like him, but he knows he can work all 3 levels, and he knows how to set corners up too, which is something that, okay, you're fast, but can you set these guys up so, because corners are fast, can you set them up so you can pull away deep? And he does that routinely.
Yeah, there's so many guys in this class, I feel like, even looking at the top, to where if you got a guy on the outside that's playing outside leverage or in your side saddle and he's 7 yards off, make him work a little bit. Make him flip his hips. Make him put his foot in the ground and work back towards the quarterback, or press up and make you sound like you're going inside. Maybe just you're pressing up on a 9 route. I agree with you with Jordan. He can flat out fly, and in the bucket of day 3, to where really him, and for teams as far as him and an Arian Smith as well from Georgia, those guys are kind of in a similar type of bucket. And Jordan's also had a lot of attention also as a potential core return man as well, and because he can obviously flat out run. So that's someone in that late day 3 bucket. They're really the overlooked guy, of course, in that Ole Miss type of passing attack, in my opinion. I like that player as well.
Yeah, and another guy I like on day 3 in that round 5 area is even smaller, but even faster, Jalen Lane from Virginia Tech. Talk to me about him.
Yeah, man, context with Jalen Lane. I wanted to see more in 2024, JC. Heading into from the spring, you're getting spring grades from teams. He had early 2nd round grades from teams across the board. And this year was a lot of designated touches. It was a lot of simple over routes and crossers. Teams still love him. And I think he's a guy, I wouldn't be surprised JC comes off the board early on day 3 in the 4th round, or maybe potentially even earlier if really a team absolutely loves what he could be right away, because the skill set is there and that attention from teams has been there. So I just wanted to see more from him in that Kyron Drones led Hokies offense this year. So really versatile player, gonna be a return man as a punt returner or on kickoffs right away, from what I've been told, and also someone that can align everywhere on offense and expand that route tree. He's got a lot more in his game than what was shown in 2024. So getting in an offense, allow him to really not be a robot, be athletic, be yourself, be Jalen Lane. That's someone that can really blossom in the right system.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think when you look at him too, one thing that he brings is just you can use him anywhere. You want to use him on springs, sweeps. You want to use him on reverses. You want to use him as a gadget player. He can do that, but he provides immediate ability as a returner too, which I think is going to, I think we're going to see guys go off the board. And you mentioned Jalen Lane potentially a little bit earlier that has speed and return man skills, specifically too, because of the new rule change where if you take a touchback, you're going 35 to the 35-yard line instead of the 30-yard line. And before that was a 25, and before that was a 20. They just keep pushing it further and further out. So
yeah, absolutely.
Teams are going to stop kicking in the end zone, so they're going to need guys to bring them back. All right, jumping to wide receivers on the outside. Let me get your opinion on him. He's not a late round guy, but the Bucs have had a lot of communication with him. And I always mess his name up, and I always think of Lord of the Rings when I say it. Elik Eomano, or however you say his name.
Yeah, Mr. Canada, Mr. Background in hockey. There's some good, there's some bad. You watch the Colorado tape, right, from 23, dominates Travis Hunter, and he basically, brings Stanford back in that ball game, which was sensational to watch. He is, in my opinion, one of the more physical blockers at the position in the class, which I love. To be a wide receiver 3 or 4 right away for somebody, you're going to have to do that. He's not the biggest guy in the world. The separation scares me. The ability to just snap off routes at a variety of levels. The toughness at times over the middle of the field. He consistently catches with his body at times. To me, I need to see a little more natural hands catcher on him. Go up and get it at times in contested situations. So the finer nuances of his game, like if he's not able to get that foot turner going and elongate that stride in space, guys in the contact window with 33s for arms are really going to give him trouble. But the physicality in his game hopefully will translate to the next level. So still in that 3rd round, 4th round type of bucket for me. I'm not a guy that sees him in the 2nd at all as of this point. But there are flashes on tape for one team to see that on it and say, hey, look, Elik is a guy that we really like. And again, as we've talked about all episode long, JC, that's only going to take one team to really fall in love with a guy, and they could. But I'm not really there yet on Elik Eomano.
Yeah. I want to like him, but I don't love him. I feel like there are guys later that I like more that I just think I'd rather, instead of spending a 3rd round pick, I'd rather you go and spend a 5th round pick and moving there. And if you guys are just joining us, we're with Ryan Fowler of the Draft Network here in the Pirate Parlay podcast. Like, subscribe, turn notifications. If you're watching on Twitter, pop over, like, subscribe. We're almost to 1,000 subscribers. Appreciate you guys. How we're just almost to 1,000 is beyond me. Ryan, I've had Jason Light on. I've had Todd Bowles, Liam Cohen, Dave Canales, Levante David, Rashad White, Tristan Wirfs, and more. Antoine Winfield Jr. I don't know. People don't like that stuff, I guess. I got to be more creative. I don't know. But like and subscribe so we can get up there so I can start getting paid and monetized with this channel, people. I appreciate you. Then I can start doing giveaways and spending my money and stuff like that like I used to on my old podcast. We got to make some money first. So like, subscribe now. Please do it. All right. Jumping back into some of those outside wide receivers I like a little bit later. In the 5th round, a guy like Pat Bryant. In the 6th round, could go a little earlier. Dante Thornton Jr., I really like him. And Sam Brown Jr. is a guy who I like too as well. Talk to me about those 3 guys on day 4 or day 3 in 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, I think Sam Brown's probably the headliner of that group for me. Really liked him at Houston before transferring, of course, to Miami and working with Cam Ward this year. And there's only one ball to go around down there for the Hurricanes, but a big fan of Sam Brown's game. Another guy that can work over the middle of the field, another guy that can be a 3-level threat, can really go up and get it, and is a really fluid route runner. And watching him back in, I would say, May or June of last year, prepping for this class, I had a 3rd-round grade on Sam Brown. Now, this year, obviously, the production wasn't there, fell off a little bit. Someone that is in that day 3 bucket right now, but he can absolutely play. And I think he may be someone that we work in a training camp or even in the preseason, and he's playing a lot, to say, where did this kid come from, or how did he slip to the 5th or 6th round? He's going to make a roster potentially as a top 5 or 6 receiver for a team. Pat Bryant, I love who the person is in Pat Bryant, and also the production of the last few years and what he was able to do late at the end of games for Illinois was pretty sensational as far as his just ability to create in clutch moments. So Pat Bryant, big physical player on the outside, will do everything for you and do it well. I do have some concerns as far as he plays extremely high off the line of scrimmage, exposing that chest and allowing corners to get into his frame a little bit. Want to see a little bit more, just get better at that, maybe sink it a little bit at the line of scrimmage, small things in his game. And then, man, Dante Thornton, 4.35 at 6'4", 6'5", whatever, that's going to absolutely play. And it plays, of course, in that Tennessee offense where as horizontal as they were with that Josh Heupel offense. So he's someone that is in that 4th round, 5th round bucket for me. Got to be a little bit more than speed for me. Snap it off, work inside, block on the outside. Can you also be a guy that works on special teams? But overall, if you're that height and you can run that fast, it reminds me a few years ago of a guy out of Arkansas and Matt Landers. Hasn't really worked out. Hopefully Dante's career turns out a little bit better than him. But when you're that big and you can run that fast, you're going to fall somewhere. And I think he's a good player as well.
Yeah, the thing about Pat, I mean, I love Pat. It's no block, no rock. He's going to. I put a versatile, no block, no rock, classic possession receiver. Big frame, strong hands. He's not going to run away. He doesn't have to. He's not going to separate in man coverage well. Again, as you alluded to, gets knocked off his route by physical corners, and like Thornton, he can be guilty of telegraphing his route sometimes. But he's just a player, and he shows up, and I really like him for that.
JC, I just want to expand on that real quick, and I'm glad you said that he's just, he's a good player. In today's day and age where we just talk about height, we talk about weight, length, RAS scores, sometimes it's just nice to take a step back out of all of the analytics and underlying numbers and just say, can this guy play ball or not? And there's so many guys in this class. One of my favorites is Xavier Restrepo, where, he ran 4.8, but watch the guy year after year after year, not just with Cam Ward. Watch him with Tyler Van Dyke at Miami. Are you a good fundamental football player? And is that going to translate to the next level? And for me, there's just so much of that in today's day and age where we want to see big, strong, fast, but can you play the game and can you succeed at a high level and be a projectable type of football player? Because teams, bottom line, JC, aren't drafting you to be in there on one contract. They're trying to find guys who can be there 2 contracts and beyond. So I think there just needs a little bit more appreciation of that in this process.
No, I like Restrepo too. I do. He reminds me not the type of, not like a comp, but a guy like Jalen Landry, Jarvis Landry, who just will a big possession slot receiver who can catch the ball and do it well and play football and will be in the league for 10 years until he finally loses what little speed he had. But I like him a lot. All right, that's gonna do it as far as my late rounders. We won't go into running back. Or actually, while I'm doing this, I'll pull up. I can give you a running back who I like. I guess nobody wants to read about 5,000 word scouting reports anymore. So I switched it up and just did like my picks in each round. But before that, when I just was doing my first and second, third and fourth, and fifth and through 7, Phil Maffa in the late rounds was a guy that I liked for the Bucs. I met with him over a virtual visit or something like that, but just a throwback, run down your throat type of guy.
Yeah, big physical player. What's nice about this RB class, JC, is that it's going to be the beauty's going to be in the eye of the beholder. You have your bigger ball carriers, your Scadaboos, your Ollie Gordons, Damian Martinez. And then Phil is a guy I feel like is being overlooked a little bit in that day 3 bucket. A lot of success, of course, in the ACC. You could say some of it they maybe ran on the ground a little bit. But, as far as just a guy that right away, you mentioned run down your throat, a guy that can create inside the tackles, got some juice outside. Also, I think the hands are going to improve in a certain offense. And specifically in Tampa Bay's facet where you don't need to be an RB2, right, or top RB in their room with Bucky and Rashad already in the building. I'm plenty comfortable with that as far as coming in and adding competition because it flat out never hurts. So I'm glad you mentioned his name as one of the guys that is a little bit overlooked from Clemson, to where you always know the type of athletes you're going to get out of the program. A big physical type of ball carrier that even in a pinch or at worst, it could be a guy in a 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, come in and get you some yards and create or just stick your face in this pass pro as well. He's a good football player that just hasn't a lot of attention. Excuse me.
Right. Shane, do you want to bring up the screen and we'll run through this mock draft? You know who I like a lot too? We don't have to really talk about him a lot. Cleo Mullings from Michigan. I really like what he could become.
I don't know if he lives at fullback or running back just yet, JC. I don't know exactly where he lands, but he's a player for sure. Absolutely.
All right. Let's start this draft up. No trades. We're going to stick where we are. So we'll see what happens at 19 as players start to come off the board here. The user interface on this new mock draft machine from the Draft Network is really nice. It reminds me of a fantasy football style draft. We're going to restart this mock draft real quick, if you don't mind, because Travis Hunter is an immediate run the pickup. So let's restart this. On the board
there, yeah. Give me Travis. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, give it Travis Hunter. Let's restart this real quick, guys. Let's restart this. It's the thing about mock drafts, man. Sometimes, like I've done them with Cam Ward still on the board. He ends up going to the Titans in the second round. It's like, I don't know. There we go. Cam Ward, Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I got to reach out to some of the guys over there at TDN in the back end there running this thing. As far as Travis should not be there. That should never happen. So
it's the same with almost every. Oh, God dang it! All right, we're gonna restart this again because Abdul Carter's there. So give me 1 second. If it happens again, we'll just go on like nothing ever happened. And we'll just ignore the player because that will happen. You'll get players who aren't going to be there in real life.
Well, I will say this. The back end, we spent a lot of time with the developers working on this thing as far as certain players that should not be there. So the Abdul Carter stuff, Travis Hunter, that's one thing I know that separates our mock draft machine and even prior years, that was always a real feel to it that said this player is not going to be here. Why? Like, for example, there's no reason Abdul Carter should be here. So from my side of things, being a course member of the Draft Network, I will definitely address that with the guys behind the scenes on this thing.
All right, let's see. Looks like the Giants didn't even make a selection. We got Cam Ward, Travis Hunt, and all these guys kind of coming off the board, which, okay, I can see a lot of these guys. Maxwell Hairston at number 11 to the Niners. We're going to ignore the top 4 names on this board because it's Abdul Carter, Jalen Walker, Tyler Warren, and Ashton Genty. None of those guys will be there, and we're not going to restart it again because we do have time here. So let's look at the guys who could be there. And look, you guys got Carson Schlesinger way up there. I think, let's look at edge. Michael Williams, Donovan Ezeiruaku are still hanging around. Mike Green, who I and James Pierce, who I believe will be off the Bucs boards.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, crap. All right.
We'll do this. Even though I know you took Malaki Starks, I think definitely mentioning Carson Schlesinger and why I said that earlier about just as far as the attention. Look, you're going to hear all the broadcasts as far as he's a former walk-on to UCLA, but someone that just can do everything at the middle of a defense. You know, he is so smart and so physical and just decisive in what he does. He plays with an intelligent type of violence in the middle of a defense. And then even though he did a little bit too much in coverage at times, meaning he would range from zone to zone, his head's constantly on a swivel, tapering it back a little bit with better athletes around him at the NFL level is a reason why he's had so much attention these last few weeks. And someone that at 19, maybe a little rich, but if they go that route, I wouldn't be mad because he's a hell of a ball player.
Right. And just kind of, so I forgot there's a on the clock. So when you guys do this, make sure you pause the draft or else you only have a minute to select. So it auto-selected for us Malaki Starks, which obviously the Draft Network is taking account the needs in potential scenarios for the Bucs in this situation. How about the rich getting richer? Abdul Carter and Aiden Hutchinson across from each other. Jeez Louise. But we're back up on the board in the second round here. What positions do you want to look at? We'll get all of them back up here.
Yeah, let me I think a position we haven't talked about too much. I mean, we talked about a little bit, but check out receiver for me. I want to see a certain player.
And Carson Slush is still there.
He is? Okay.
53. Wide receiver. Looks like there's been quite a little bit of run on wide receiver. Jalen Nolan in the first round to the Chiefs, which is something I could see. Honestly, when I saw that, I was like, that would not surprise me. It's such a Chiefs pick.
Check out corner for me. Let's see if one of the guys I'm interested in is still there. He's not there. Benjamin Morrison was one of the guys that I really like in this class.
I'm going back and forth between Siobhan Revel and Benjamin Morrison for my second round pick in my final mock. I know they like both.
Let's go Siobhan there. Let's go Siobhan Revel from ECU. Is as far as just to provide some context on him to where very good friends with Siobhan and his representatives as far as just someone that looks good, following the October 15th ACL reconstruction. He is working his tail off to be ready for week 1 of the 2025 season. So really like Siobhan Revel as far as a downhill physical type of player. There are some finer nuances in his coverage ability, but really good football player for somebody.
Thomas Fidone is a guy who's getting a lot of buzz recently. I don't know if he goes 3rd round, 9th overall, but
outstanding. He probably has. I'll be honest with you, JC. I'm not sure there's a player in the class with better hands than Thomas. Carson number one overall recruit at tight end out of high school.
All right, we're back up here in the clock in the 3rd round here. Should be pick 19. It is pick 20. So Gray Zabel sitting here is not going to happen. But there are some guys here. Jeffrey Bassa, Kevin Winston Jr. What position do you want to see here?
So we took Malaki Starks in the 1st round, but I think, just for the sake of argument, I think we could just have fun with this thing and say, we could just go. I want to talk about Kevin Winston a little bit. I know we took Malaki earlier, but just again, for the sake of argument here, say we didn't add Malaki, say we added Carson there, for example, or Donovan Ezeiruaku. I think Kevin Winston, for me, I personally have him over Nick Worry in this class. Kevin Winston is a day 1 player for me. I have a 1st round grade on Kevin. I have had him since pre-injury back in September and August. This is a flat out football player that can play all 3 levels. He tackles his tail off. He plays with his hair on fire. He's extremely smart in zone coverage. He can eliminate tight ends up the seam. He fits what defenses want in today's day and age. So for the sake of argument here and providing more context for those out there that may be unfamiliar with him because they didn't see him a ton, Kevin Winston Jr. from Penn State's a player that I really like for Tampa Bay.
All right, let's grab him. Just for my own curiosity, where did Demetrius Knight Jr. go off the board? Because I think this is a great spot for him.
Yeah.
If he's there.
Great young man, too.
Oh, yeah. Football dude.
Yep.
Did he not go off the board? Was he still on the board?
I'm not sure.
I see. Talk to me about Chris Paul Jr. Why is he falling in some places into the 5th round?
Yeah, there's some prospect fatigue on Pooh Paul. Pooh Paul gets after people. I love it in the middle of a defense. He may be the most physical player in this class, regardless of position. I think Cam Scadaboo's up there, of course. But looking at him, he's just someone that just flat out plays with his hair on fire in the middle of a defense. And he's uber athletic as well, watching him in the middle of a defense to where there are some inconsistencies at times as far as correct depth in zone and following the crosses in front of you as far as in some man match and zone match type of concepts. But overall, he's someone that you want to chase down these running backs within the interior and flat out get after people. I really do like Pooh Paul, really in that late 2nd round, early 3rd round type of bucket.
Let's pause this so it doesn't make the auto pick. We're back on the board here in the 4th round. All right, what do you want to see? Get the all.
Let's go back to receiver. Let's check out wideout. We haven't added there just yet. I think another player to add out there. I like the 3 that they have as far as top guys. Did we add? Oh, we hadn't had a linebacker yet. Go up a little bit. Yeah. Restrepo, Isaiah Bond, Daniel Jackson. No, go to check out linebacker. Check out linebacker a little bit. I think this is a little early for some of those guys there in the 4th. Nick Martin. We'll take Nick Martin here. He is there. There's so much variety with teams where they are on Nick Martin. Some people have him as a top 75 player. Some have him as a guy in the 140s, 150s. I know that's really the epitome of this class. For me, I cannot say enough good things about a healthy Nick Martin. Back in 2023, the Big 12 title game, Oklahoma State, Texas, chasing down Xavier Worthy. Can't believe I almost forgot his name. Xavier Worthy down there at Texas from 10 yards of depth. I'm not sure if there's many players or people on earth that can do that. And him as a linebacker at 235 plus pounds at 5'10", 5'11", is a different type of athleticism and creativity as far as to be able to make plays up front. He's still kind of new to the position. Only have 2 years, really a year and a quarter of experience now to the injury in 2024. But I love Nick Martin in the middle of a defense. And I think Tampa's in that spot right now, JC, where starting to plan a little bit for the life post Levante David would be very smart for them.
Right. All right. We're back up here in the 5th round. We have just a 7th rounder after this. They do not have a 6th round pick. Where do you want to go here?
I like how the board played out here. Ashton Gillott from Louisville is a guy I like, but I think a guy a little bit higher up on the board there with a Rondé Gadsden, who I really like from Syracuse. Yes. I don't know if he is a tight end, if he's a receiver, is he just a flex weapon? But I think he's going to live as that H, that F, and in this situation to where he's better than Payne Durham in space. He's better than Coke Kieft in space. Dylan Culp can really run out of Washington, but what is he really going to be potentially as a receiver? Rondé as a guy that lived at Syracuse on the inside, the outside, made a little bit of transition this year. In that situation specifically, being with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where you don't have to be a top 2-3 weapon right away, I love his size at plus 6'3" to go up and get a couple opportunities there for Tampa Bay as a flex guy in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I had who did I have on last night? John Vogel I had on last night, and he took Gadsden as well. He was really high on him. And I think I had Thor. Thor was on last Friday, and he had some really good praise for Rondé Gadsden as well.
Yeah, both he and even later Bryson Nesbitt, of course, from North Carolina, 2 ACC guys, kind of in the similar bucket as far as players.
Yeah, I need to take a better look at him. See what I missed. Because if y'all are talking him up, then I need to make sure that I need to take a good look at him.
Yeah, definitely check him out for sure.
All right. Final pick in the round here. Alrighty. Remaining top needs are edge rusher, although it's kind of, you're probably not getting someone here that you love. Although he won't be here, but David Walker's here. You run that up, I think. I've got him as my best fit in the 4th round. Outside linebackers are dropping any minute now, actually. Probably was already dropped. Wide receiver, offensive line. What do you want to look at?
Let's check out the offensive lineman, because I also want to talk a little bit about a guy that's, I'm not sure if we have him in our database. I tried to do my best. Check out interior. Check out interior. Luke, if he's there, I don't think he's going to be there. Luke Kandra will go here from Cincinnati. Just a very, very physical player, lives in that linear path. If he gets his hands on you, kind of how we talked about Holland Pierce earlier, there's a guy that is a physical type of football player. Also just very efficient in his movements up front. Someone that I think right away could be someone that is that swing type of center, swing type of guard immediately. So I like Luke Kandra. Again, don't think he's going to be there here late on day 3, but also a player that I like. But I wanted to take this time, JC, just a little bit to talk about a few players for those out there listening. As far as that have a lot of buzz late day 3 that probably aren't talked about a lot. One is JJ Roberts, the safety from Marshall. He may go in really as high as the 5th round. He's not talked about at all. Again, JJ
I believe
Roberts,
the Bucs had him in for a 30 visit.
The Bucs did?
I believe they did.
Okay. I love that, because he's someone that is not talked about a lot around the industry on the media side of things. Thomas Perry, I know he's had a great story as a small school kid from Division III Middlebury. But people forget that he started his career out at LSU before transferring to lower levels. Heard so many good things from teams. I expect his name to be called. But the number one guy, I would say, even Lan Larison, running back from UC Davis, Dylan Laub from New Hampshire. He had some attention last year as far as that small school running back. Lan Larison.
J.J. Robertson.
Yeah, Lan Larison out of 30 with the Lions. But last guy is Tommy Malott, quarterback, Montana State. Blew up his pro day, 6'2", 225, ran high 4.3s. Some people have him in the mid 4.3s, 46 touchdowns in 2024, Walter Payton Award winner. So the FCS's version of the Heisman Trophy. He's not someone that's being projected at all to come in and be a QB1 or anything like that. But as far as that potential H-back, versatile type of player, potentially a position switch at the next level, potentially even a lighter tight end, teams may ask him to just bulk up a little bit. late 7th round, priority UDFA. Keep an eye on Tommy Malott, Montana State, as a very versatile and explosive type of athlete for somebody.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about him recently as well.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. All right, so it's not finishing the draft for us for whatever reason. But here are the draft picks that we made. Malaki Starks in the first round was kind of auto picked for us, but hey, he's probably going to be my guy in my mock, and he was your guy in your mock this week. Yeah. So let's go with it. Siobhan Ravel, who is a guy who I'm deciding in the second round if it's going to be him or Benjamin Morrison. I like both of them a lot. I think both of them, obviously, injury concerns with both. We'll get a better idea on Benjamin Morrison. That's why I'm not sure yet until, what is it? It's tomorrow, right? Or is it today?
22nd, I believe. I got to check my schedule.
22nd today.
22nd. It is.
So he'll be working out for scouts today if he already hasn't. I haven't checked Twitter yet. I'm not sure what time that's taking place. So Benjamin Morrison is a guy I'm really looking at. I know Siobhan Ravel, he cleared all his medical checks. So he's good. Kevin Winston Jr., love him. I'm with you. I think he'd be a late first, early second round guy without the torn ACL. If you want a strong safety, no one lays a wood like this guy. And he's much better in coverage than people talk about. Nick Martin, I had in my last mock that I just did. But at the last minute, I changed him out for Teddy Buchanan. I was really it was a coin flip scenario. They brought Teddy Buchanan in for a 30 visit. So I went with him over Nick Martin. Although they did have a formal interview with Nick Martin at the Combine. Aronde Gadsden, the second out of Syracuse. Obviously, bloodlines are strong with this guy. His dad used to play for the Dolphins. Wrapping it up with Luke Kandra, the versatile offensive lineman from Cincinnati. I like Luke Kandra a lot as well. So solid draft. If you look at Malaki Starks is playing more of that nickel guy. You got your outside corner. You got your safe rotational. You've got a lot to work with here in the secondary. A lot of bodies. Add them to Antoine Winfield Jr., Tyke Smith, Zion McCullum, and Jamel Dean. And I don't want anyone saying anything about the secondary, but fun exercise there. I love doing these mock drafts when I get people on to do that. So that being said, that's going to do it for us. I want to thank Ryan so much for your time, all your insights, especially on the late round guys. Man, you know your stuff. It was awesome that we were kind of on the same page there because I just do this. I mean, I do it professionally, but I don't do it professionally. You know, the draft is just something I love to do.
Of course.
You do it professionally. So I appreciate that. We're both kind of lockstep with a lot of the same things. Go ahead, take this time to promote yourself. Do you have a final mock draft coming out before Thursday? What else you got going on cooking over at TDN?
Yeah, lots of stuff. Final mock will come out tomorrow over there at the Draft Network. Throughout the draft, let's just say at the end of round 1, I will have my top 30 players released for night 2. So rounds 2 and 3, post day 2, I'll have a round 4 mock draft out at the Draft Network. And then once we get past the 7th round, I will have also the UDFAs will get going. So sources around the league, agents, other teams, scouts, let me know. Players, let me know where they're going. Make sure you give me a follow there on X if you don't already at _Ryan Fowler. Put those post notifications on. There'll be a lot of news coming out once that draft doesn't stop after the 7th round is finished up with Mr. Irrelevant. So lots to come there at TDN.
Awesome. I appreciate you so much for your time. Appreciate everyone's time today in this special afternoon lunch edition podcast of the Pirate Parlay. We'll be back here tomorrow at 7 p.m. Live with Josh Capel at Pewter Report with our kind of final mock draft, final breakdown, Bucs centric after getting all these wonderful national draft analysts. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then one more sleep, after tomorrow, and we're waking up and it's draft day. So super excited. Appreciate your time here today, Ryan.
Of course. Thanks, JC.
Absolutely. That's it. Ryan Fowler, Draft Network. Great stuff. Little unconventional mock draft. They're taking 2 safeties, but I don't know what happened. That's why we stick to the other one. That was all over the place. Davey Walker in the 7th round. I don't think that's going to happen. So rankings might be a little off there. But absolutely a lot of fun as always. More of a, exercise, kind of talk about prospects. And I think he did that with some of the guys that he took and some of the names that he dropped. So awesome time there. Keep looking out on Bucs game day. Edge rushers just dropped. Got 7 guys, 1 in each round, who I think the Bucs could be after. I put on X yesterday. I've got a gut feeling. I think it's Maxwell Hairston. For whatever reason, I feel like that could be the pick. And at the top of the show, Ryan talked about why, he wouldn't fault a little bit of a reach, but wouldn't fault any guy for. So go check that out. Another guy, Walter Nolan. We talked about him last night. He's like my wild card player. And a guy who I just wouldn't be happy about, but they've met with him. Brought him in for a 30 visit. Michael Williams is another guy who is just a name to kind of look at, keep an eye on, that could be in that picture conversation there at 19. But we'll get into that and more tomorrow, guys. Where we're going again. We're going every single day. We're going to have a pod, probably draft day. Draft days will be much shorter. It'll be live on location. I'll probably try to grab, one of the constituents over there to pop on to give our instant reaction. But yeah. Appreciate you guys. I'll have inside linebackers out over at Bucs Game Day later today, and then corners and safeties tomorrow. My final mock early Thursday morning. Got a lot of stuff cooking. It's draft season, and it's almost here, so super excited. But thank you guys, everyone who tuned in. If you're on Twitter, X, whether you're listening on the podcast forum, like, subscribe, turn notifications as always. But thanks for joining me again here on another edition of the Pirate Parlay podcast here on the Sick Podcast Network. I'm JC Allen. We're out of here. Peace out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Pirate Parlay on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.